I lived peacefully with my Korean family for 3 years. But I never expected my quiet gratitude would spark the neighborhood war that changed everything. What started as whispered comments became public humiliation that forced me to reveal a truth nobody saw coming. The autumn wind scattered golden leaves across Maple Street as I walked home from Seoul International High School, my backpack heavy with books and dreams. At 15, I'd grown comfortable in this quiet neighborhood where traditional Korean homes lined perfectly manicured sidewalks. But today felt different. "Look, there she goes again." Mrs. Choi's voice pierced the afternoon silence from her garden gate. I kept walking, eyes focused on the familiar blue roof of home just 3 houses away. Experience taught me that acknowledgement only invited confrontation. "Hey, Nigerian girl." Young Soo, Mrs. Choi's 17-year-old son, called out aggressively. "Why don't you go back where you came from?" My steps faltered. The words hit like physical blows, even though I'd heard variations countless times. Other neighborhood kids emerged from yards and doorways, drawn by the commotion like moths to destructive flame. "She doesn't even look Korean," whispered Minjung, a girl from my chemistry class. "The park should have adopted a real Korean child," added Mr. Kim, stepping off his porch with folded arms. I turned slowly, meeting their hostile stares with quiet dignity. "This is my home." "Your home?" Mrs. Choi laughed harshly. "You stick out like a sore thumb. This is a Korean neighborhood for Korean families." Heat rose in my cheeks, but I maintained composure. "I am Korean. My family is Korean." The growing crowd exchanged skeptical glances. Children pressed closer, emboldened by adult participation. Elderly Mr. Shin emerged from his house, shaking his head disapprovingly. "Korean?" Young Soo scoffed. "You can't even speak properly. Your accent gives you away." "She's ruining our neighborhood's harmony," Mrs. Choi declared, her voice rising. "We've tolerated this long enough." But what I said next shocked everyone. "Then let me prove I belong here." The crowd fell silent. Even the autumn breeze seemed to pause, waiting for explanation. "Adaeze!" Mrs. Park's panicked voice cut through the tension as she hurried down the street, shopping bags clutched in trembling hands. My adoptive mother's face showed mixture of fear and fury upon seeing the assembled neighbors. "What's happening here?" she demanded, positioning herself protectively beside me. Mrs. Choi stepped forward, appointed spokesperson for the group. "We need to talk, Jung-hee. This situation has gone too far." "What situation?" Mrs. Park's voice carried dangerous edge. "Your daughter," Mr. Kim interjected, "doesn't fit in here. The children are asking questions. Property values could suffer." "She's bringing down the whole neighborhood," added Mrs. Choi. "We think it's time you considered other arrangements." Mrs. Park's face went white. "Other arrangements?" "Send her back," Young-soo said bluntly. "Find her a family where she belongs." The cruelty of those words hung heavy in the cooling air. I watched my mother's hands shake with rage and heartbreak. "She belongs with us?" Mrs. Park whispered fiercely. "Does she?" Mrs. Choi challenged. "Look around, Jung-hee. Does she really fit?" That's when I stepped forward, voice steady despite my racing heart. "The neighborhood talent showcase is next month." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I'll participate," I continued. "If you still think I don't belong after you see what I can do, I'll respect your wishes." Mrs. Park grabbed my arm. "Adaeze, no, you don't have to prove anything to anyone." "Yes, I do, Yoma," I said softly, using the Korean word for mother that made her eyes fill with tears. "Fine," Mrs. Choi declared. 1 month, but when you fail to impress anyone, you'll accept that some people just don't belong everywhere." The crowd began dispersing, satisfied with their temporary victory, but nobody was prepared for what came next. That evening, Mrs. Park sat at our kitchen table, laptop open, fingers flying across keys with determined precision. "Adaeze, sweetheart," she called. "Come look at this." I joined her, curious about the urgency in her voice. The screen displayed documents I'd never seen, my adoption papers, background reports, family history from Nigeria. "I'm researching everything about your background," she explained. "If those neighbors want proof you belong here, we'll give them more than they bargained for." "Ioma, you don't need to. Listen to this," she interrupted, reading from the screen. "Adaeze Okafor, daughter of renowned Nigerian musicians Kemi and Emeka Okafor. Parents operated prestigious music academy in Lagos, specialized in traditional Nigerian instruments and cross-cultural musical fusion. My breath caught. I barely remembered my birth parents, lost when I was 7 during a car accident that shattered my world. There's more, Mrs. Park continued. Adaeze demonstrated exceptional musical aptitude from age 4, fluent in Igbo, English, and beginning Korean language studies before family tragedy. I had forgotten, I whispered, memories stirring like awakening giants. The reports mentioned specific achievements, she read on. Winner of West African Youth Music Competition, proficient in traditional drums, flute, and vocal arrangements, natural ability to blend musical cultures. But why haven't I pursued music here? I asked, confused by my own disconnection from these talents. Mrs. Park's expression grew sad. The language barrier, sweetheart. When you first arrived, you were so traumatized and shy. Every time you tried joining school music programs, they said your Korean wasn't good enough for vocal participation. The truth hit like revelation. I'd buried my musical gifts beneath layers of linguistic insecurity and cultural adaptation. They missed your incredible abilities because of accent prejudice, she concluded angrily. The school music teacher said I should focus on more suitable activities, I remembered bitterly. Their loss, Mrs. Park declared. But now we know the truth was about to get much bigger. The following week, the community center buzzed with activity as neighbors gathered for the monthly association meeting. Tonight's agenda included finalizing talent showcase plans and addressing the Adaeze situation. Mrs. Park and I entered together, facing a room full of skeptical faces. Mrs. Choi had clearly been busy spreading her campaign. Before we discuss the showcase, Mrs. Malak Choi began. We need to address the elephant in the room. What elephant? Asked Mrs. Kim, an elderly woman I'd never heard speak before. The appropriateness of certain participants, Mrs. Choi replied diplomatically. You mean Adaeze, Mr. Kim stated bluntly. I mean maintaining our neighborhood's cultural integrity, Mrs. Choi clarified. I stood up slowly, heart pounding but voice clear. May I speak? Surprised murmurs filled the room. Few had heard me address a group before. I understand your concerns about belonging, I began in careful Korean. For 3 years, I've wondered the same thing. The room quieted, attention focused despite themselves. When I first came here, I spoke broken Korean and cried every night, missing everything familiar. The Park family didn't just adopt me, they chose to love someone completely different. Mrs. Park reached for my hand supportively. I've learned Korean customs, celebrated holidays, helped elderly neighbors with groceries. I bow properly, remove shoes indoors, and respect elders exactly as you taught your own children. But you're still not Korean, Young-soo interrupted rudely. You're right, I agreed, surprising him. I'm Nigerian Korean. I carry both cultures in my heart, and I believe that makes me stronger, not weaker. That's impossible, Mrs. Choi scoffed. You can't be two things. Why not? Asked Mrs. Kim unexpectedly. My grandmother was Chinese Korean. Are you saying she didn't belong either? The room shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Kim's family had lived here for 40 years. That's different, Mrs. Choi protested weakly. How? Mrs. Kim pressed. Because of skin color? Because she understands Korean values. Mrs. Choi exploded. What values? I challenged gently. Hospitality? I bring soup to sick neighbors. Respect for education? I maintain top grades while tutoring younger children. Family devotion? I honor my parents daily. Korean parents, Mr. Kim corrected. All my parents, I replied firmly. I honor my birth parents' memory by remembering their gifts, and I honor my adoptive parents by embracing their love. Both make me who I am. The room fell silent. Even opponents seemed thoughtful. 1 month, Mrs. Choi repeated stiffly. Prove you belong through the showcase. I will, I promised. But can they really change things? Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Kim began visiting our house, sharing stories about her own multicultural heritage. She revealed how her Chinese grandmother faced similar prejudice decades earlier. The secret, she told me while teaching traditional Korean vocal techniques, is showing them that different doesn't mean lesser, it means richer. Other neighbors quietly approached with support. The Lees, who'd immigrated from rural Korea, understood feeling like outsiders. The Santos family, Filipino-Korean, had faced their own integration challenges. We should have spoken up sooner, Mrs. Lee admitted apologetically. Fear made us cowards. But the core group around Mrs. Choi remained resistant, spreading rumors and hosting meetings in their homes. The neighborhood split into factions: traditionalists versus progressives, fear versus acceptance. I spent hours practicing for the showcase, working with Mrs. Park to blend my Nigerian musical heritage with Korean traditional songs. We discovered something magical. My voice could carry both cultures simultaneously, creating unique harmonies that honored both traditions. "You're not trying to fit in," Mrs. Park observed during one practice session. "You're creating something entirely new." "Is that enough?" I wondered aloud. "It's everything," she assured me. The evening before the showcase, Mrs. Kim brought wonderful news. "Half the neighborhood will support you tomorrow," she reported. "People are remembering their own struggles with acceptance." "And the other half?" Mrs. Park asked. "Still convinced you're threatening their way of life," Mrs. Kim admitted. "Will the truth come out publicly?" I whispered, suddenly terrified of performing before a hostile audience. "Tomorrow, sweetheart," Mrs. Park said gently, "you'll show them that belonging isn't about erasing yourself. It's about sharing your gifts." The community center packed beyond capacity on showcase night. Families filled every seat while others stood along walls, creating an atmosphere of anticipation and tension. Mrs. Choi sat prominently in the front row, arms crossed and expression skeptical. Young Soo slouched beside her, already prepared for disappointment. But Mrs. Kim and her growing coalition of supporters scattered throughout the audience, offering encouraging smiles. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Mr. Park, serving as evening's MC, "our final performer tonight is my daughter, Adaeze Park." I walked to the small stage setup, wearing hanbok that Mrs. Park had carefully selected, traditional Korean dress in colors that honored both my cultures. The audience fell silent. "Tonight, I want to share something that represents who I am," I began, voice steady despite racing heart. I positioned myself at the microphone, closing my eyes and drawing deep breath. The song I'd chosen was a traditional Korean lullaby that every person in the room knew from childhood, but I would sing it with Nigerian vocal techniques my birth parents had taught me years ago. The first notes emerged pure and clear, immediately recognizable as beloved Jajanga. But as the melody developed, subtle African rhythms crept in, creating harmonies that had never existed before. Gasps rippled through the audience. This wasn't Korean music, and it wasn't Nigerian music. It was something entirely new and unexpectedly beautiful. Mrs. Choi's mouth dropped open. Young Soo straightened in his seat, shock replacing his smirk. As the song progressed, I added traditional Nigerian call-and-response elements, inviting the audience to participate in ways they'd never experienced. Tentatively, then with growing enthusiasm, voices joined mine. The elderly woman who'd been most critical found herself clapping along to rhythms that somehow felt both foreign and familiar. Children swayed naturally to the blended beat. When the final note faded, the room sat in stunned silence. Then Mrs. Kim began clapping. Mrs. Lee joined her. The Santos family stood applauding. Within moments, the entire audience erupted in thunderous ovation. Even Mrs. Choi rose to her feet, tears streaming down her face. "That was," she began, voice-breaking. "Beautiful," whispered Young Soo, staring at me with newfound respect. "That was Korean," declared Mrs. Kim firmly. "Korean with Nigerian soul, and it was perfect." What lasting change will happen? 1 year later, Maple Street had transformed beyond recognition. The annual talent showcase now featured multicultural performances that drew audiences from across Seoul. Mrs. Choi had become an unlikely ally, organizing cultural exchange events that celebrated the neighborhood's growing diversity. Young Soo approached me last month, asking if I'd teach him some Nigerian rhythms to incorporate into his rock band. "You showed us that mixing cultures creates something stronger," he admitted sheepishly. The elementary school invited me to develop a music program that blended traditional Korean songs with international influences. Children now grow up understanding that different backgrounds bring gifts, not problems. Mrs. Park often jokes that adopting me didn't just gain them a daughter, it gained the whole neighborhood a teacher. But the most powerful change lives in the hearts of families who learn that identity isn't about fitting perfectly into existing boxes. It's about having the courage to create new spaces where everyone belongs. If this story of hidden talent fighting prejudice moved you, wait until you see what happens next. And if stories like this inspire you to believe in the power of courage and authenticity, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna for more transformative journeys like Adaeze's. Looking back, I realized that Mrs. Choi's challenge wasn't really about proving I belonged. It was about discovering that belonging isn't something given by others. It's something you create by staying true to yourself while honoring the communities that shape you. Adaeze's story reminds us that every person carries hidden gifts that can transform entire communities. Here at Mystic Tale by Luna, we believe these moments of courage and transformation happen every day in workplaces, families, and neighborhoods around the world. If Adaeze's journey moved you, subscribe and join our community of dreamers who believe that one person's authenticity can change everything, because everyone deserves to see stories that remind them. Your differences aren't obstacles, they're your superpowers. Today, when new families move to Maple Street, children run to greet them with excitement rather than suspicion. They've learned what I discovered that October evening when I chose courage over comfort. The most beautiful harmony comes not from everyone singing the same note, but from different voices creating something magnificent together. Your voice matters. Your culture matters. Your story has the power to change minds, heal divisions, and create the belonging you seek. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to sing their truth.